الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وبعد. When I was growing up, I often heard the statement, "You Palestinians sold your land to the Jews." Even until today, some Muslims are repeating the same statement. Let's talk about it. A very important date to remember. That date is the year 70 AD. This is when the Romans expelled the Jews from Palestine. Then the 1900s started. The 1900s started, and the Jews started coming and coming and coming until the state of Israel was established. And then what happened of wars and other violence after that until today, literally. So how did the Jews come up with this idea that some Muslims are repeating, that the Palestinians sold us their land? Let's talk about it. Number one, there were some naive Palestinians, whether Muslim or Christian, who in the beginning did not realize there is a plot, a scheme behind the Jews trying to buy their lands. They didn't know, and they didn't realize there is a danger to come, because at the time it wasn't that obvious to many people. So they sold their lands to Jews directly. Muslims are the most generous people. When the Jews started coming to Palestine and saying, we were oppressed in our, homelands, or the lands we came from, the, European countries and other areas, they told them, fine, come live here. You see, the Jews, the Arab Jews, the original Jews, lived among Arabs in Arab countries such as Morocco, Yemen, Iraq, Egypt, for centuries and centuries in peace. But these people who started coming, especially from Europe, they said, we were oppressed. They said, okay, come live here. Naive people sold them their lands. They didn't realize there is a plot behind it. They started increasing, and then people realized that I'm not selling my land to the Jews anymore. If I did before, I'm not going to do it again. And I'm telling my neighbors, don't sell your land to the Jews, because there is something behind what they're doing. So they started realizing the scheme, the plot, and stopped selling their lands, except for those who did not care about what their religion says in this instance, and they continued selling for money. Most others, when they realized what was going on, they did not want to sell to the Jews directly. There was also the violence that started happening and increasing. The violence did not stop until today, literally. So there are those who left their lands, homes, for fear for their lives. These people, with the things developing, couldn't go back to their lands, and using the courts and other systems that the state of Israel established, the only democracy in the Middle East, they gave cover to the Jews to claim lands and homes that they never owned, and farms, and given the land to them. They call it Amlak Ghaib. This is after the establishment of Israel. Ownership by those who are absent. Our own land in the West Bank, in the city of Jenin, was called as such all the time. And we were afraid that they're going to come and know about it and then come and steal it. So the course there, which was always, until today, a cover for the Jews to kill, steal, commit violence against the Palestinians, and then they do nothing about it because it's not a judicial system, it's a system of occupation. So the violence started increasing, and many people left because they were afraid for their safety, the safety of their families. Then the Jews came and claimed much of those lands any way they could. There was something called Al-Wakala Al-Yahudiyya, the Jewish agency, entrusted with two main tasks. Number one, bringing Jews from all over the world to Palestine, come to the promised land. Number two, finding land for the Jews who are coming from all over the world to the promised land. Because promised land obviously needs land to be promised. So they started working, and they kept working for decades, even after the establishment of the state, to confiscate or buy land from Palestinians. The confiscating part, it's obvious. I don't need to talk about it. They just come and take it and goodbye. Not even goodbye, bye. But for the part where they bought land actually from Palestinians, how did that happen? As I said, the Jews did not live in Palestine for 18 and a half centuries. Had no connection to that land. They didn't own anything there. They have no claim over Palestine whatsoever. But they started coming and coming and coming, increasing. They needed land. So among the ways they got the land is to buy from Palestinians. How did they do that? Especially in the beginning. They set up many organizations as front and hired people, lawyers, even some Arabs who worked for them. And under the cover of these agencies would go to the Palestinians and try to, buy the land from them. And the Palestinians didn't know that the Jews were behind all these fronts until they started realizing that the Jewish agency is deceiving us. They're the ones who are behind those sales. And not the only agency, by the way. There were other organizations, Jewish organizations, but they were buying through front organizations, through people who were not Jews, and so the Palestinians did not suspect, especially in the beginning, that the land is actually going to the Jews. And they sold to them until they realized that nope, I'm not selling my land except to people who I know personally, who will never sell to the Jews. It happened to us a few years ago. We owned land in Palestine, the city of Jenin in the West Bank, and we had this land for a long time. We don't live there, so we sold. I went there and I saw the people who were going to buy, asked about them. They're Arabs, they're Muslim, they're Palestinians, and it's not possible they will sell to the Jews, so we sold to them. So let's go back to the topic. Now, three main reasons. Number one, naive Palestinians, they sold directly to the Jews. There was no fear at the time from the Jews actually aiming to take the entire land of Palestine. Violence and buying. The buying through deception had a major role in the area that they bought in Palestine. Now let's be clear. How much of the area of Palestine that was populated by people was actually sold to the Jews. And we mentioned number one, violence, they just took the land. Number three, selling less than 3%. 3%, which means what? 97% of the land was not sold to the Jews. When the plot against Palestine and its people became clear, the Palestinians, until today, they will not sell to the Jews. Really. For anyone to make this claim, don't you see how attached the Palestinians are to their land and farms and trees, olive trees especially? Don't you see how attached they are? You think they're going to be just selling to the Jews like this? I mean, for the Jews and their supporters to spread this lie, it's natural. Lying comes natural to them. Jesus, Allah's blessings on him, said to the Jews, your father is the devil. And he called him the father of the lies. So they would lie, no problem. But for Muslims to repeat this statement, it's really sad. It's sad. On top of being a lie, a slander, it's sad. Look at the Palestinians with all the violence and brutality of the Jews. They're not leaving. They won't leave. All these decades, the Jews had to come to actually kill them, kick them out by violence from their lands and homes so they can take over their area. But they wouldn't sell. To the Jews, they would not sell. Look at what's happening today in Gaza. All the brutality of the Jews supported by the West and the bombing, the killing of the people of Gaza. And they're telling them, we'll let you go to Egypt, temporarily until we finish off with Hamas, then you can come back. And many Palestinians, some of them came on TV and said, we heard this story before. When the Arabs told us, come to us. This is before 1948. Come to us and we will protect you, and we'll send in our armies there. And then they went there, but they never could come back to their lands, to Palestine, until today. So people in Gaza were saying, no, I heard this story before. And many people who left their lands, they never came back. I'm not leaving. Palestinians love Palestine. They're not going to sell it to the Jews. Yeah, Muslims. A Muslim who repeats this lie, what's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? I mean, you don't want to support the Palestinians? Suit yourself. You're going to meet Allah sooner or later, and defend yourself with Allah. Why lie? Why lie? I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help our brothers and sisters in Palestine against one of the most brutal occupation of all time, the Jews, what they're doing to the Muslims and Christians of Palestine. Even the Christians wouldn't sell to the Jews. The Palestinians are so attached to their land, and it's not possible that they would sell. 3%, after decades of trying, less than 3% was sold to the Jews through deception, through lying, and through Muslims in the beginning being naive, and Christians who sold to the Jews unknowing about the plot to come against their land and their cities and their farms and their olive trees. The Jews go to Palestinian farms, especially in the West Bank these days, and cut down the olive trees. Do they have something against olive trees? Yes, they do. They know how attached the Palestinians are to those trees. And you're telling me the Palestinians sold it? And this is a lie. This is a slander. people have to be ashamed of themselves who say this. Feel ashamed. And remember, spreading this kind of news helps the Jews, because this is what they want. They want the Muslims to think, the Palestinians gave up their land and we just came and took it, empty land. Look what's happening in the West Bank and Gaza only this month, October. Look how many thousands of Palestinians were killed. They're not leaving. They don't want to leave. They're not leaving. It's not possible that a large part of the Palestinian population that owns all of Palestine, that they would give up their land. They will say, I'm staying here. Either I stay in my land alive or I'll be buried in it. I'm not leaving. And you come and tell me that they sold the land to the Jews? I can't understand. Sometimes I have arguments with some Muslims, and I really can't understand the logic, if there is any, behind what they're doing. It's a lie. Support your brothers and sisters in Palestine, at least with invoking Allah to help them against these criminal thieves, because that's what Israel is. They are common thieves. Just invocation, at least, keep this closed from branding the Palestinians as the ones who sold their land to the Jews. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help all Muslims of the world to come together and to help their brothers and sisters in Palestine and in other areas where they are being killed and oppressed by the violent non-Muslims. Oh Allah, help us and help our brothers and sisters all over the world.